My parents lavished everything on my brother Eric. Private tutors, a $30,000 sports car, and even a cushy job at my dad's company. I was invisible until I quietly became a millionaire at a family barbecue. That's when Eric completely lost it. Growing up, Eric was the golden child. He had private tutors for every subject, while I rode the bus to our neighborhood public school. For his 18th birthday, Dad handed him the keys to a brand new BMW. I got a rusty bike from a garage sale. When Eric graduated with a communications degree and a mediocre 2.7 GPA, Dad created a vice president role for him at the family real estate firm. Salary, $95,000. I graduated with honors in computer science, and Dad told me they didn't need IT staff. So I moved across the country, lived in a tiny studio, survived on instant noodles, and taught myself to code after long days working construction. My first app failed in 6 months. The second barely got 400 downloads. But the third caught the eye of a venture capitalist who invested $180,000 for 15% of my company. By age 28, I'd sold that venture for $4.2 million. I kept quiet, lived simply, reinvested every penny. No one in the family knew because no one ever asked what I did. They just assumed I was scraping by. Last month, I flew home for my nephew's birthday barbecue. Eric pulled up in a leased Porsche, loudly bragging about closing new deals. Mom gushed, Dad slapped his back. I parked my battered 8-year-old Honda on the street and carried in a gift that went unacknowledged. Halfway through burgers, Eric started complaining. The company's struggling. Dad won't give me a raise. My mortgage is crushing me. Dad nodded, sympathetic. These are tough times for everyone, son. My Aunt Linda, who had quietly observed the whole afternoon, suddenly spoke up. How are you doing, sweetheart? The room fell silent. Everyone had forgotten I was there. I'm good, I said. Work's been solid. Eric laughed. Still doing that computer stuff? Dad says there's no money in it. Actually, I said, calm. I do all right. Eric smirked. What, like 60K? 70K if you're lucky? I sipped my water. A bit more than that. Dad waved dismissively. Let's not compare careers. Eric's in a real profession. That's when Aunt Linda set down her plate and said, real profession? Do any of you even know what he does? Silence. Mom blinked. He works with computers. Aunt Linda shook her head. He sold his last company for $8.3 million. He's a millionaire. You could have heard a pin drop. Eric's face drained of color before turning pale. That's not possible. It is, Aunt Linda said. I invested early in his second startup. I hold shares in his current venture. He's worth over $12 million. Mom's fork clattered to her plate. Dad stared at me like I was a stranger. Eric jumped up, knocking over his chair. You've been rich all this time and never said a word. Never helped us. You never asked, I replied. In 15 years, not one person asked how I was doing. You assumed I was failing. You let us struggle the same way I struggled when I was eating 99-cent meals while you whined about which luxury car to lease, Eric shouted, jaw clenched. Dad found his voice. We could have used that money. The business has been bleeding cash for 2 years. And you never once called me, I said. Not for help, advice, or even to say hello. Mom tried to patch things over. We're still family. We've always loved you equally. Aunt Linda laughed. Don't insult him. I've watched you favor Eric since they were kids. Then she dropped the real bombshell. Perhaps someone should tell Eric why Dad created that VP position for him, she said. Eric looked at her. What do you mean? Aunt Linda turned to Dad. Tell him, or I will. Dad's face went pale. Linda, don't. The VP role, Aunt Linda said quietly, wasn't because you were gifted. It was a settlement. Your father lost $300,000 on a real estate deal involving your mother's brother. He promised him he'd take care of his nephew, Eric, as repayment for that debt. You were hired not for your talent, but because Dad owed your uncle money. Eric's face drained completely. He looked at Dad, who couldn't meet his eyes. Everything he had built his identity on, the golden child title, that VP role, the hefty salary, it was all just debt repayment, not skill, not merit, but a financial obligation. I stood, thanked Aunt Linda, and walked to my car. Behind me, Eric's voice cracked as he asked Dad if it was true. I never heard Dad's answer. Driving away, I realized something vital. Being invisible had given me something they never would. Independence.